This video shows the useful general-purpose operator loop files and how it works. Now, the operator has many possible uses. The most obvious use is to perform bulk importing of data in files. It can also be used to find files somewhere in a file system, and it could be used as the basis of tools to move or copy files around. Anyway, what we'll do is we'll cover the parameters to this operator, and these include choosing a folder where you want the operator to find and loop over files. You can set various parameters to control how the operator goes into subfolders. Obviously, there are various regular expression filtering possibilities you can use. The operator itself sets certain macros that you can then use inside the operator. And obviously, the operator itself will create file objects that you can use inside the operator, and it returns them as well, so we'll look at that. So let's start with, well, keep it simple. Here's the loop files operator. And you give it a directory to start from, and I'm going to look in the installation directory of RapidMiner Studio on my Windows PC, and I'm going to set up a filter. This is a regular expression, and that's basically say 0 or more characters of any character at all, and then jar. So I'm going to look for jar files, so anything .jar. I'm also going to use this option here, just look in the file name of the files that I find. You can choose the full path that includes the file name, or you can actually just have the path excluding the file name. So your search, you could limit that to say look in folders by doing that, and say set that to be some sort of folder name that you knew you were interested in. That would just restrict the search to that folder matching that name. But I'm just going to look at a file name for now. Now, as the operator proceeds, it fills in macros, and there are 3, and you can give them what name you like. The defaults are here. This file name is going to be the file name, obviously. File path, that's the full path plus the file name, and parent path is just the path excluding the file name. There are various other parameters: recursive, iterate over files, and iterate over subdirectories. So I'm going to set these all to true, and this will cause it to descend into all the subfolders it can find. Now, inside this loop files operator, I'm simply connecting the input to the output, and you'll notice it's of type file. It's a file object. Later on, I'm going to use this copy file operator, and you can see what that does. But for now, I'm just going to let it connect the input to the output. And you'll also notice I'm doing various logging of macros. So this will help you understand what the file name, file path, and parent path macros contain as the operator executes. So, just in case you don't know, just to recap your memories, provide macro as log value. That operator will actually turn this macro into something that you can then log using the log operator. So here, the log operator, you give it the name of the process that you want to get the macro value from, and then you choose macro value here. And then what we'll then do is a named column will appear in the log corresponding to whatever the file name operator here has provided as the macro. So by this effect, what will happen is each time this operator executes, we'll essentially just log the file name, file path, and parent path macros to the log. And then at the end, we're going to change that to log to data, so it's an example set, so it's a bit easier to look at. And you'll notice that the output from the loop files operator is a collection of files. The little purple colour gives it away. And then that goes straight through to log to data, and that gets through here. And obviously log to data is creating an example set, hence the top output here is just an example set. So let's just run that, see what happens. So it outputs, well, obviously the log, there's a log that gets output, and you can see here, this is the raw log that comes out. And you can see as it's found things called something jar. So there are 96 jar files in the installation directories of RapidMiner Studio. This is the example set version of the same thing. Very interesting. And in addition, the loop files operator has returned a collection of file objects. So basically each one of those is a file object that you can in principle use later on. Now if I turn recursive off, you'll notice that it fails. And the reason for that is it's not going into any of the subfolders and it's not finding anything, so the log to data operator has essentially failed. If I set a breakpoint on the loop files, that's okay, it hasn't failed in there, but there's actually no output. So what's happening here is that the recursive flag means it's not going into the subfolders and it's not finding anything. If I change that, if I delete that and run it again, now what happens is it's just going to find folders and files that are essentially at the top of the directory structure that I'm pointing my loop files operator to. Okay. Now, in my experience, this iterate over files parameter doesn't seem to do any difference, makes any difference. And I never understand the difference between iterate over subdrs and recursive. So, frankly, I just set them all to true, because that's usually what I want to do. I'm sure there's some subtle point about this, but I actually don't know what it is, so just ignore it. So, but let's just, as promised, use the copy file operator here to actually move a file around. So, copy file basically takes a source file and a new file name. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a file and copy it into dtemp. And the way you do it, you just simply use the value of the macro file underscore path, which is the full name of the file plus the full path. And I'm simply going to copy it to dtemp, and then I'm just going to use the file name because I want to keep the name the same. So in principle, I could copy the entire contents of a folder into a new location. I could even move it actually, because there's a move file operator as well. I'm not going to do that, too risky, don't want to damage anything. So I'm just going to set up a regular expression. I'm going to look for the groovy jar file, which I happen to know is somewhere in the folder structure. And I have here is dtemp. I'm going to delete the one I prepared earlier. When I run the process again, we should find a file turning up there. So here we go. I'm going to run this now. So it only found one thing, so it's actually found it. And by bringing back dtemp, you can see here is the file, and it's indeed 12:34 on Sunday, the 21st of September. So that correctly copied the file. So it shows how easy it is to use the macros and the file object inside the loop files operator. Obviously you could do more. You could actually use the read CSV operator here. You could actually connect that up here, and you could then do some import processing of that. You can also do read documents. So when we get onto text processing, you can use loop files to process documents for subsequent processing. Okay, so that's just about everything. What I'll do is I'll run it one more time. I will set this to be look for jar files in general, and we'll just run it. I'm not going to do the copy file, get rid of that. So I'm just going to set the regular expression to look for jar files and let it run. So iObject collection of files, an example set containing file name, file path, and parent path.